Hey everyone, welcome back to Admix for another episode of Giving the Game Away. And today, Ian and I are going to talk about the consoles of the future. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Sam?
It's good. It's good.
Very good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, the console space is really interesting. I've enjoyed consoles for many a year, which makes me sound incredibly old, but I'm not. It's a whole other space to PC gaming and mobile gaming, which is what we mostly talk about.
Yeah.
And it's a good time to talk about it because we're just about to enter a new generation of consoles.
Yeah.
It's right on the horizon. Like end of year, things are going to change. And we've had lots of teasers about it. You know, we've got hype news about the PS5 having an amazing SSD, and that's going to be a game changer. And then the new Xbox has a ton of game changers as well. But we're sort of the opinion that they're not really the consoles of the future just yet. And we're going to explore that throughout this entire conversation. Essentially, the console wars aren't what they used to be at all. Basically, we need to establish two things, which we'll go into in depth again. Consoles, they can't compete in terms of hardware anymore. And that's not a can't in terms of one console is just blowing everyone else out of the water. It's more like they shouldn't be competing in terms of hardware.
Yeah, it's not enough of a differentiator anymore.
It's just not. It's just not. And we'll get into that in a second. But the other point is that consoles aren't at war with other consoles, which is really interesting. They're at war with people like Google and Amazon, which we'll get into. But let's dwell on that hardware point for a little bit. So, have you seen any of the specs coverage for the new console, Sam? Are you a console man?
Well, I'm actually not. I mean, obviously follow the whole market. I think we've talked in a previous episode that I really got into gaming as part of this kind of transition towards casual and hyper casual. This is really what got me. So I'm more of a hyper casual player. I have played games on the PC. Very few on consoles. I don't actually own a console, but the demo of the PlayStation 5 with Unreal 5 engine was, truly extraordinary. So, yeah,
it is incredible. Like these are very, very powerful machines, and the hardware is very, very impressive. They are, I'm a PC guy now. I transitioned from consoles when I moved because I had very limited travel space. But I miss consoles a lot, and I look at the hype in the news coverage, and I can't help but get on board with it all because it looks amazing. But hardware will only get you so far. The Nintendo Switch, which I don't know if you've experienced, Sam, it's really engaging. It's really, really fun, and it is a very modest hardware machine. It can't compete with the PS4 and Xbox One in hardware in this generation, let alone the next one. And yet, in just 3 years after the Switch came out, it claimed half the market share of the PS4, except the PS4 had 7 years to earn that. That's a huge, huge difference in time.
Yeah.
Switch just annihilated it. And you can talk about software and the importance of that, and the games you have, the exclusivity, the reputation you have as Nintendo. Obviously, all helpful factors. But one of the biggest things is accessibility. And if you look back at the Nintendo Wii, which is sort of it was a titan of a console, very modest again hardware wise, but everyone's mum and gran had a Nintendo Wii. Some still do in a box somewhere, but everyone had one. Incredibly popular. The Switch also the thing the Switch and the Wii share is how accessible they are. They're appealing to everyone. They appeal to people who don't even consider themselves gamers. Exactly the same as hyper casual.
Absolutely.
On mobile. Yeah. It's a very I find it very tactically impressive from Nintendo. They never intend to make a console that's just the best it can be. They're not making sports cars. They're making just your everyday fun thing.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. Someone has to be.
Absolutely, and I think it's very much in line with the transition that we've seen on mobile as well, right? It's not about hyper realistic gameplay anymore. It's really just about trying to find something fun, something exciting, something easy to use, low friction. People don't really have time or just the cognitive ability to always dive into complicated games and spend days at a time trying to solve the problem. They just want to fill their days. We talked about this, right? It's about filling the gaps in your day with something else than scrolling on Facebook or browsing the web. Now you can play games, and grabbing the Switch is a lot easier than sitting down in front of your TV and cranking up the PS4. So that all makes sense. It's just more in line with the new way that people consume information, which is more bite-sized rather than long chunks of time. Exactly.
And on that note, the console market is great and all, but mobile is doing incredibly well. It's claimed almost half the global games revenue share in the world, I think, or something like that.
It's twice as big as console, roughly.
Exactly. It's huge. Mobile is absolutely huge. It's as big as all console, which is an important definition. And you've got to, when you're looking towards the future of console, you've really got to ask, what are the competitors to console doing now that console can learn from? And there's a few things that mobile are doing that console aren't, that can sort of explain this difference. We've gone over them all before, but to just list just a few randomly. There isn't a hardware barrier. You don't have to buy another machine just to play a game. You already have a phone for various reasons. Just download a game, super easy. There's also no financial hurdle, not only in buying a machine, but in buying the game itself. Most games on mobile are free to play. That's the dominant market in the market world there. There's also a social pressure thing. Similar to consoles, in the console war especially, the most popular games tend to have social elements built in. I know a lot of people who buy a console based on the consoles their friends have. In a slightly different vein, mobile games are built for virality. They'll try and employ mechanics that get you to share it with your friends or encourage your friends to download it to get you perks or something like that. Very tactically good, and it's something that mobile does significantly better than console for all the other reasons. And just those three reasons alone, and there are many more, it tells you that mobile is such a different beast. It's a whole other world. And consoles do have a lot to learn, which, we'll get into depth on what we imagine the future to be in a minute. I think we should also talk about that point on the fact that consoles aren't at war with consoles anymore. They're not. We've already said that they should be at war with mobile because that's the real competitor. But interestingly, people in the console space don't necessarily see it that way. So Phil Spencer, head of Microsoft's gaming and Xbox team, when he was in an interview with The Verge, he said that he doesn't see Nintendo and Sony as a competitor. He sees Amazon and Google as the main competitor. Because the traditional gaming companies are out of position. And he was talking about cloud gaming and that infrastructure, not mobile. He was talking about the fact that Google is playing with Stadia and they've got huge server farms, and Amazon have huge server farms and they're playing in the gaming space too. They can create a social gaming situation that nothing else can compete with. How much exposure do you have to cloud gaming, Sam?
But following the space, for me, this is really where this is coming next. I think exactly as you said, right? Accessibility is pretty much what cloud gaming is all about. Is you pick the game and immediately you can start playing it. There is no friction. It's there on your laptop. If you don't like it, you don't have to own it. So it's as you said, very similar to the App Store today, where you can just try before you buy, browse the store, install something. The apps on the phone are almost instantly downloaded, most of them. So it's definitely playing on that, instant access to new games, and you don't need to actually have the game on your device. It's all streamed directly. So I think this is going to be a game changer. But the technology is not exactly there yet. in terms of gameplay, especially multiplayer.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of Stadia is awesome to me. Just having games on demand that will stream to you, regardless of the quality of hardware you've got. Stadia did not, when it entered the market earlier this year or last year, it was not met well. People weren't a huge fan of it. It wasn't very popular. I don't actually know exactly why. There's probably a lot of reasons. Do you have any insight on that on your end, Sam? Why did Stadia not perform as well as they hoped?
Yeah, I don't think it's been marketed as heavily as it was intended. I think that they're still really in that beta stage where they're really trying to figure out what to build and who to appeal to. I feel like the content was probably not, the massive games that people are looking for, which is always a huge part of how people make decisions, of course. So I think all this stuff is still being developed, and I know that they were having some technical issues as well with especially with the multiplayer.
Yeah, it is interesting that you say it's a marketing thing. I think there's almost an audience problem in terms of marketing, which you alluded to as well. Stadia is great if you're already a gamer and you're already coming from a console mindset where hardware matters, and maybe you don't have a great PC or anything like that, but you want to play the games that your friends do. Stadia there is a great option, but if you don't think you're a gamer, then if you don't think you're a gamer, you probably don't have great hardware anyway. You're not going to be interested in Stadia.
Yeah. This is, I think, the core problem with the whole console thing is they are still marketing it to gamers. And again, when we say problem, we're not saying that, just to be clear, it's not that the console world is about to die, right? It's doing just fine, but it just hasn't seen the growth that mobile has seen. And the main reason is because mobile is not a product for gamers, but it kind of converts non-gamers into gamers by appealing to very kind of core drives without creating any friction on the financial side. You don't have to buy anything. It's super simple. You don't need to commit any time to it. It's really something that, is just there in your hands. And then you start playing and you eventually realize, actually, I do like this game. And because consoles are targeting gamers to start with, they already know their target market, and they already have all these people that are willing to spend $400 for the console and then $50 for every game, and that's fine. But this is not where the growth is in the gaming market. The growth is in the casual gamers, people who are not playing games because they want to complete the game or necessarily win anything. They just play games to spend time. It's just a new way to spend time. And these casual gamers, that's where the growth of the mobile is. And with the current setup, console just are not going to be able to target them.
No, they're really not. And I
don't know if they should, or that's another question, right? Do they, when you're, it's interesting what you were saying, that they are competing with mobile. I think a lot of people listening to this would probably think that we're just missing the boat here, right? It's two different audiences, almost two completely different products, like a hyper casual gamer and a hardcore gamer. It's they both call gamers, but really they have nothing in common. So how do you justify that? What do you mean exactly by consoles should or are competing with mobile?
I think there is a mindset that pressure from mobile in the console market. So mobile is great at converting people who don't think they're gamers into gamers, and then those modern genre mashing situations like hybrid casual games, they're great at converting casual players who don't think they're gamers into mid-core
paying users.
Behaviorally, they still don't think they're gamers. And that's useful. That's within the mobile world, that is getting more users and it's converting them up into a higher monetization bracket. Console doesn't really have anything like that. The people who are those mobile gamers, they will, they'll discover that they're gamers. Well, they won't call themselves gamers. They'll become more and more profitable to a publisher, but they still won't call themselves gamers. They won't buy a console off of that. Whereas the console is in a really interesting space, because if they can convert people from thinking they're not gamers into thinking that they actually are, into genuinely thinking that, then they will spend money. They will buy consoles. And that's not impossible for various reasons. First of all, most houses in the world today have a console in them in one form or another. The console just caters to one person in that household, or two people who think they are gamers. Second, consoles some kind of appeal to more than just gamers anyway. Games like Fortnite, which are, free to play and incredibly successful based on that. Very, very, I don't need to tell you how successful it is. But it's also more than just a game. It has these social areas. It is social media in a different form. Stuff like that can convert someone who is interested in the social media side of it, who's interested in seeing Travis Scott in concert digitally, into someone who then plays games. And because they're playing games on a console, they will have this mindset shift that I am a gamer, I should buy games. That's where I think they're at war with mobile. Consoles aren't getting any of the non-gamer market share of mobile because they have a completely different strategy. Console need to employ that strategy and develop and learn from mobile in order to just increase their own user share, really increase their own potential audience.
I think this is really what it is as we said, the growth in the market around gaming is not actually the number of hardcore gamers, it's really the number of casual gamers that don't seem very valuable if you just look at a glance, because they're not willing to spend on anything, but their time is valuable. And this is something that social media, above everything else, actually taught us. It's you don't have to have a paying user for having a valuable users. And I think this is what mobile has done so well. And so what do you think concretely, what should console do today to respond to that?
There's a few spaces that I think console aren't performing as well as mobile in. We'll break them down one by one. So discovery is a huge initial one. Mobile and even PC do this really well, but console isn't quite as effective.
Discovery.
Yeah, exactly. Discovery. So this is literally, how do you get games in front of people? How do you help people find games that are relevant to them, that they will enjoy and play and eventually spend money on if it's free to play? Mobile does it really well, algorithmically, based on apps you download, based on adverts in other games. Hypercasual obviously throws around their own market, their own user base. Steam does it really well, and they're always improving, and they're very transparent about that. They have the Steam Labs. They regularly have experiments with improving their recommendation algorithm. Very useful, very accurate a lot of the time, by my own impression. Console could experiment with both of those. So console could learn from mobile's behavior patterns based on what games you play. Here's what you'll enjoy. And they can also learn from Steam's transparent experimental nature. Steam are doing a lot of interesting things, all to suggest games to you with varying parameters. Like Steam has a new thing where you can put in whether you want it to be indie, released in the last 3 years, free, not free, how accurately you want suggestions to be based on you even. It's really interesting. So I think the future for consoles in that space will be having a home screen with game recommendations, and sort of an explore option where you can browse algorithmically selected things for you. You can have access to demos, and it's very accessible. I think demos will be a big part of discovery as well, bigger than it is now. And I think we're going to see a new age of trying to convert from demo a lot better. So what I mean there is converting people who play the demo into paying users. So
and that's where cloud gaming would be incredible, right? Because you play the demo. If you want to continue, press here. Your card is already connected. The game is already playable. It would just be a lot less friction than then thinking, okay, I need to go and buy this game, where you drop off a lot of users.
Exactly. I think there's going to be a lot more motivation to do that, and we're going to see a lot of publishers experiment with ways to push people over that little hurdle, like offering them free exclusive cosmetics just you play the demo, and that'll be something they have that their friends don't. And that's going to be a huge thing in terms of discovery. I think free to play is also going to really explode in a whole other way. Premium games aren't going anywhere, but free to play will hit the console market even more heavily than it already has. And obviously they'll need to be monetized in different ways, which we've spoken about before, with League of Legends using in-game ads, for example. I think that will hit console in a big way too. It's already there, just subtle, not as integrated as it could be.
But I think actually that point about new business models and discovery is not two things. It's really the same thing, because if you want to get your game discovered and give people a chance to play it while reducing friction, you can't really charge $50 for it, right? That's a big friction point right there. So to increase discovery, to make it easy for people to start playing games, the business model have to change, and we're going to evolve towards a lot less paying upfront and a lot more trying to monetize users on the back end. And so again, as you're saying, what they can learn from mobile, it's also how to create a free-to-play games. This is very, very different to create a game where you have to integrate monetization within the gameplay, compared to just creating a game where you're going to charge up front, and then from there it's just fun in the game. It's very, very different. The teams, even the makeup of the team of these studios are completely different. Yeah. So this is a bigger change than just let's go free to play. It is a huge shift, and this is probably why we talk to a lot of the big consoles, a lot of the big game publishers, and they've been making a lot of money without really paying attention to the fact that they could make a lot more. They've been very successful in their own right, and changing the baseline, all their core knowledge and beliefs about what makes a great game is a huge shift. So I think you're right. We will definitely start seeing changes there, because the pressure from the market is starting to be a lot, and all these big companies, including Sony for the PlayStation 5, are actively looking at this specifically. But I think it's going to take a while for them to fully adopt it and to be successful at it.
It is definitely a time thing, though. It's almost inevitable that they will discover this market and that they will try and get a slice of that pie. Another thing that I think that consoles really need to develop in terms of the consoles of the future are the communities and their sense of community. We already have obviously console fanatics. You have a community with other Xbox users and other PlayStation users. We're talking about more of like the global gaming community, how a console can connect you to everyone, not just a small subset of people. Twitch is a great way to do that. There's already some Twitch integration into consoles, not as much as there could be, especially when you consider that the average Twitch user watches about 95 minutes per day, while the average gamer spends about 1 hour playing per day. You get a lot of people who watch significantly more than they even play, which is massive. That needs to be, it needs to be integrated more, really. It's such a key thing for discovery, and for, again, social pressures in terms of buying games and monetizing on games. If you have a home screen where you can see live streams of games that you would enjoy and games that you're playing and games that your friends are playing, and you can request to see their screen, which I know PlayStation has experimented with, you'll get a lot more interaction, and the mere presence of social features alone will boost users, because a lot of people are attracted to gaming today because of those social features. I think there's a basis for this one in consoles now. I think it's just going to massively improve and develop over time. The last point, I think this is one that you'll be passionate about, Sam, is genre diversity. So consoles have a very diverse range of genres, don't get me wrong, massive range. But mobile has genres that console just hasn't been successful with at all. And I'm talking about games like hyper casual. I could not tell you a massive hyper casual game on console.
They're just not there. The way that it's designed and the target market and the way they monetize is just not adapted to console. Having said that, I think that you are onto something there. We considering the how big the market is growing for this casual game market, and the fact that yes, casual gamers are probably not ones to buy a console, but consoles are part of a household, right? There's I think 160 million households in the US with a console. It's roughly half of the population. And so considering that these people live with other people, once the console is in the house, it's almost like a free device that could appeal to less hardcore players.
Exactly. Especially as consoles are becoming media hubs. And they've been media hubs for a long time. Before I moved to university, my parents were watching Netflix on my Xbox and Amazon Prime and stuff like that. That alone is a way to get these non-gamers into the console space. Now it's how do you make them play games? I absolutely know that if there was something like Gardenscapes on Xbox that my mum could have played while waiting for something, she would have done it. And you don't think a match 3 game will do that well
on a big screen? That would be something.
Yeah, they really would. Even if there's just a section on the homepage, which is full of games that are, free to play. They're designed to just be micro games for small breaks in your day. That will attract a whole new range of players for people who live in a household with a console but don't consider themselves gamers. And eventually those people will work up the ladder, will get hybrid casual games on consoles, and they'll convert those people into hardcore gamers eventually. I do believe that my mom could be playing the latest Halo release if this was happening years ago.
I think there's definitely a crossover. I don't know how far into hardcore it gets, but there is definitely been proof that a lot of hyper casual gamers start on hyper casual and eventually move on to casual gamers for sure. And I think the point that you're making here is great. It's not something that I've heard a lot across the industry, but I do believe that by really thinking smart about this, the console should try to aim to broaden their market. And the best way to do that is to basically sell it to an actual hardcore gamer who is willing to put the money up front, but then trying to appeal to more of a family entertainment. And we know that Nintendo has done that already, right? They're really trying to create games that are more social and you can involve your friends. But I think other consoles could also learn from that and would see the benefit of tapping into that much, much larger casual gaming market.
Absolutely. I think Nintendo are they're really renegade in this space. Like, they're doing a lot of things that other consoles aren't, and they're getting huge success for it. I'm honestly amazed that Microsoft and Sony haven't learned from the Switch before. Saying that, the Switch isn't doing things that the other consoles are doing. That's shooting themselves in the foot. If the Switch had much better multimedia capabilities, I think that would be an even more appealing device to households. I think the future of consoles is very much one where the consoles sort of unite. They sort of bring together the global gaming community, and they learn from each other in terms of strategy and market and the games they're making. And they really try and tackle this mobile behemoth, the world of mobile gaming, which is so alien that they don't even know how to fight it yet. I think that will be the biggest change that we'll see in the consoles in our lifetime.
Yeah, this is exciting, and it's exciting to see how cloud gaming will play into that, and the PlayStation 5 as well. So it's a really good time to start thinking about this.
It really is. It absolutely is. Any temptation to becoming a console gamer, Sam? You gonna get a PS5?
Oh, I'll definitely have a crack at it. Of course, I love those kind of graphics. It's just it requires a time commitment that is just not really in line with what I normally do. So this is why I'm more attracted to casual games. But I'm definitely looking forward to play Candy Crush and other hyper casual games on my massive screen. That would be quite fun.
Yeah, of course. We'll sort it out for the office.
Absolutely. Yeah, can do that.
Yeah. I think that is our piece on consoles.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Please keep following us, Admix Play, and I'll see you next week for another episode.